Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to our 17th Frontline conversation um, with leaders throughout the region who are really helping lead us through these days of COVID and unrest and everything else that's going on. So I want to thank you very much for joining us today. We are joined by Koube Ngaaje, who is the head of DASH, a very important organization, very important facility for the people of Washington. So Koube, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Doug.
So I always start with how you're doing. How you doing personally? How's life treating you in these rough times?
That's a loaded question. Let's see, how am I doing? I would say three things. First and foremost, I'm blessed. I feel incredibly blessed to have an incredible family, both personally and through my family at DASH, my LGW family, the newly minted class of 2020, virtually unstoppable, who have poured into me so much over the last few weeks and months. The only reason I am is because of the people who pour into me on a daily basis. I'm also incredibly proud. I am proud of everything that DASH has been able to accomplish. We are the largest safe housing provider for survivors of domestic and sexual violence here in the DC metropolitan area. And the way in which DASH has been able to pivot and continue to serve thousands of survivors throughout the pandemic is just something we're incredibly proud of. From meeting survivors where they are, doing some very targeted fundraising efforts over the last few months to meet that need. When the pandemic first broke, we saw 4 times the number of survivors reaching out to us. And it has been an uphill battle. And so in addition to being blessed and proud, I am exhausted, physically, mentally, emotionally. And despite all of that, I'm also really hopeful. So I am looking forward to what we can accomplish as an organization, what we can accomplish as a region. I think 2020 has asked us to be who we say we are in many times over. So that's how I'm doing.
Well, I'm also very hopeful. I'm very optimistic lately. So I hope I continue to feel that way. I think things are going to turn out well at some point in the future. So when COVID first hit, what actions did you have to take, and how did you respond to that when people were told to stay at home and shelter in place?
Well, for DASH, when COVID first hit, we had to balance both health and safety. And again, we sit at the intersection of domestic violence and homelessness. And one of the things that COVID really started to make apparent to all of us, those of us who do work in domestic violence knew this already, but domestic violence became a pandemic of its own. And so we immediately shifted our services to ensure the safety and health of our staff. And our doors remained open. Our staff shifted to a staggered remote schedule where they were working from home, coming into the office 4 hours a week while continuing to provide additional services to survivors. And so obviously, shifting and bringing additional IT support was critical. Our building Cornerstone is the largest safe housing building for survivors in the district. It's 42 units for survivors. And so and that is also the location where our offices are. And we had to institute and bring on cleaning 7 days a week for the building and for all of our staff who are coming and going. We limited the volunteer activities in the building and shifted those to remote, shifted our weekly housing resource clinic to a virtual clinic. And in the matter of days, actually, within 24 to 48 hours, this all happened. So it's been a whirlwind, and we have instituted additional leave policies for our staff, providing them with the resources that they need, providing survivors with electronic resources that they would need to do telehealth and medical services, and really running the full gamut. Our board stepped up immediately and even put together a a fundraiser to buy and support meals for our staff who are our frontline staff coming into the office. I still go into the office quite often. I'm in the office about 3 to 4 days a week. And so it has been nonstop, but we are, really, again, just proud to have been able to do that so quickly. And that would not have been possible without many of the organizations who are represented on this call. And I'm sure we'll get to that in a little bit.
So you're providing housing for, you said you had a 42 unit facility that you run, that your offices are at. What's that been like, still providing the housing during this COVID? What changes have you had to make to deal with that?
We have had to make several changes. Some of the changes I mentioned before, changing the volunteer activities in the building, shifting those to remote. We also work with a property management company on site, and so they manage most of the services in the building. We've brought on our building monitor staff are providing more hours into the building, and so that came at an additional expense to the organization. And because it is a safe and secure building, that is also the home for survivors, and survivors come and go as they please. That is their home. We're just fortunate and blessed enough to work there. And so we ask that survivors limit their visitors to emergency visitors only to help stop the spread of COVID. We have had some positive cases in working diligently to ensure that we immediately secured 1 or 2 units as space for staff and or survivors to quarantine if they needed to. And really focusing on the cleanliness and health of the building, as well as the dedicated resources for survivors. And so our staff are checking in with survivors remotely, continuing to provide them with the resources that they need, as well as providing increased financial assistance to survivors, some of whom have been furloughed. In the midst of the outbreak, we actually welcomed 2 new families into Cornerstone, both who became homeless directly as a result of domestic violence and COVID. One whose abuser came home because he had been furloughed, and she did not know that he had been furloughed, and she was in the midst of leaving. And typically, the minute a survivor decides to leave is the most lethal time. We had another survivor who was welcomed into Cornerstone because their abuser had them at gunpoint as a result of the pandemic. And so we had to get that survivor into Cornerstone for safety. So, we are anticipating even more, especially as the stay-at-home orders lift. We just had our senior management huddle, which is another shift we made. We meet every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with our senior leadership team to ensure that everybody's on the same page. And as the stay-at-home orders are being lifted in Maryland and DC and Virginia, we're seeing increased high lethality cases coming into our Cornerstone building, as well as our other community housing programs that provide scattered site housing throughout the metropolitan area.
So Beverly Hubbard has a question about, you said you've seen a 4-fold increase in people reaching out to you for help. Is that because of new domestic violence cases? Is it because of sort of ongoing cases that have been exacerbated by COVID?
Beverly, I do believe it's a combination. The one thing domestic violence doesn't do is it doesn't discriminate. And, because survivors have been in close quarters with abusers for a long time, and the disproportionate effect of COVID on low-income households and on households of color, that financial impact also comes into play when we're talking about domestic violence. And so we anticipate that, families and individuals who are already experiencing domestic violence may have been at higher risk because of COVID, and will continue to be at higher risk as the financial impact takes even stronger foothold in the coming weeks and months.
So you talked about expenses for your organization. How's that going? How are you dealing with all the new expenses, and how does it look for the next year for you?
Um, well, when the pandemic first hit, we projected a $350,000 deficit and gap, primarily because of COVID, unexpected expenses stemming from COVID. I am extremely proud to say that we've now met our goal, thanks to so many of the people in our community. The Greater Washington Community Foundation. I'm looking at a list here, Avalon Bay Communities, Tableau Software, United Way, National Capital Area. I know Rosie was on last week. She and her team have been fantastic. Wells Fargo Foundation, Littenberg Foundation, ABLE, and so many others who have reached out to support Dash. And many of those were conversations that we had with our community partners and also with partners that we have through LGW. We had to shift immediately to focus on dedicated fundraising efforts, and we've welcomed over 400 new donors since the outbreak. And we are diligently working to ensure that we can steward and continue to maintain those donors. I'm not going to say tirelessly working, because we are tired, but we are diligently working to ensure that we can continue to meet those financial needs of the organization. And the truth of the matter is, the future is tight. That goal gets us through. We run on a fiscal basis. We run from October 1 through September 30th, and that gets us through the end of September. But Dash, like many housing agencies and domestic violence serving agencies, funded by local and federal funds. And we all know that the city is projecting significant deficits in the billions for next fiscal year. And, we've already received a confirmation of flat funding from our second largest funder, and that's been flat for 4 years. And if we take a cut in fiscal 21 with the mayor's budget, that will have dire consequences as well. So while we are celebrating the amazing, support and success of the last, 3 months and 4 months in fundraising, we know that excitement just cannot last long, because we will be in some pretty tight areas come fiscal 21, especially if the mayor's budget turns out to be what it is.
Koube, that's a lot to worry about. Congratulations to you on getting the money to last you through the fiscal year. And thank you to all of the partners and donors, the 400 plus new donors who have come in and made contributions to you. But you're right, with the decrease in local government tax revenue, it's going to put a squeeze on everybody. So what would be the impact if you lost a big chunk of funding? Would you have to close Cornerstone? Would you shut down parts of Cornerstone? What would happen?
My heart is palpitating.
Sorry, I apologize for that.
No, it's something that, one of the things that keeps me up at night. We have a team of 23 full-time staff, 9 part-time staff. We have local programming and national programming. And if we take a cut in our local funds, which accounts for about 50% of Dash's, $5.7 million budget, then, we will have to make sacrifices in how we meet the needs of survivors. At the moment, for every one survivor that Dash is able to immediately house, there's at least, 4 more that we can't, due to a lack of availability in housing and a lack of available resources. And what we know of the pandemic, what we already know of domestic violence, is that the floodgates will open. And so this is not just Dash's problem, right? This is a community issue. And there's no greater platform than Leadership Greater Washington to be able to say, in order for us to really meet survivors' needs, we're going to have to ensure that both on the private side and on the public sector, that the resources are made available. One of the domestic violence is a leading cause of homelessness, and a lot of people don't realize that. And it's impossible to address homelessness effectively if we don't, address the underlying causes of domestic violence. And so we are hopeful that we will not have to make the sacrifices, and we are working on a couple of initiatives already. We have started a capital campaign for our Cornerstone building. We're currently in the quiet phase. It's a $4.5 million campaign. And we've already secured $2.1 million towards that campaign to be able to secure that home permanently for survivors in the city. And so we will be shifting gears in the coming fiscal year to continue to chip away at that goal to ensure that, Cornerstone, again, is not in jeopardy. And the same thing for all of our other programs. We talk a lot about Cornerstone because it literally is the cornerstone of DASH. It's our largest program, but we have our community housing programs where we provide scattered site housing. And that program, we have our empowerment project that has 15 units for survivors of domestic and sexual violence, where we house survivors in the DC metropolitan area in DC, Maryland, and Virginia, supporting them for up to 2 years with financial resources and also with wraparound advocacy. And we just brought on a new program, which we're excited about, which is another reason why I have hope to bring on 20 additional units for survivors in DC. And our new program is called Right to Dream. We have not made a formal major announcement for it, but that will be coming. And this is going to serve survivors age 18 to 24, which again is another population that is in dire need of resources. And so working to secure those additional funds in the coming year. It's a grant that is on an annual basis, but is renewable for up to 4 years. So the major attention being focused on the sustainability of DASH, but also the sustainability of funding sources that are coming into the organization. And also leveraging those resources to build out our survivor resiliency program, which is our homelessness prevention tool. And SRF, as we fondly call it, provides emergency financial assistance to survivors to help them eliminate the single barrier that is threatening their ability to remain safely and stably housed, which DASH started that program in 2013. And, with COVID, we're seeing so many of those types of flexible funding programs where, agencies and organizations are now providing funds directly to survivors. DASH has been doing that since 2013. Our SRF program currently serves an average of about 75 survivors. And we are working diligently, again, to expand that to serve as many as 100 to 150 survivors on an annual basis, which is more than 3 times the number of families we can house in Cornerstone at any given moment. So a huge impact on sustainability, a huge impact on a huge focus on lasting impact for survivors. And the one other way that we are working to look towards the future this year, DASH alongside, House of Ruth, worked to bring together our partners to the table, funded by the Office of Victim Services of Justice Grants. The city is funding a strategic plan for domestic violence housing services. And so all of the DV housing partners, House of Ruth, My Sister's Place, DC Safe, DASH, a Community Family Life Center, Community Family Life Services, and Calvary Women's, and the DC Coalition Against Domestic Violence all are working together with the Raven Group to put together a plan for the city on how to address domestic violence housing and what resources would be needed for the next 2 to 5 years. And so we hope to have that plan ready for the city and mayor by the end of August.
So are you seeing, because of COVID and the impact of COVID on domestic violence, are you seeing a greater sense of urgency from your partners, from the city, in terms of we need to respond to this? How are people reacting to what's happening?
There is definitely a sense of urgency across the board. I think, and we feel like now the world is finally listening, right? It's a shame that it took COVID to get people to realize just how insidious in how deeply rooted domestic violence is and how it impacts not just housing, but also a lot of the other issues that we are collectively trying to address in our city. And so it's fortuitous that the city, and also it's actually not fortuitous, It's intentional that the city already had resources dedicated to put together a strategic plan. Michelle Garcia over at the Office of Victim Services and Justice Grants and her team, along with Laura Zeilinger at DHS, our partners over at the Community Partnership, all coming together to sit down at the table and say, how are we going to address the needs of survivors in the city? And we knew we needed those resources before COVID, and we need them even more because of COVID. And again, just as an example, we saw 4 times the number of survivors, reach out. And so we are literally girding ourselves and bracing ourselves for what's to come, to ensure that we can meet that need.
So you talked about a 4-to-1 ratio, I think, where you said for every person you can serve, there are 4 people that you can't, and your requests now have multiplied by 4. So how are you handling that? How's the staff handling that?
Can you see my gray hairs?
There you go. You cannot see any gray hairs, Koube. None at all.
Well, we are Dash already, because we knew about this before COVID, right? We already had plans to increase our programming. And so over the last 2 years, we have been working to get to that point to help bring down that statistic. While Cornerstone is a fixed number of units, at the moment, we are, with our new youth housing program, we are more than doubling our impact in our community housing program site. We're going from 15 units to 35. That's through the Department of Human Services, and then also through our targeted efforts to expand our Survivor Resiliency Fund program. That program has the capacity to really make an impact, right? If we are able to provide assistance and advocacy that is trauma-informed and dedicated to a survivor at the point when they most need it. The average grant runs is about $2,200 currently, right, on our SRF. And sometimes it's as small as $100. Sometimes it's as much as $10,000. But to be able to spend that amount and help to eliminate the barrier and prevent the survivor from becoming homeless in the first place, then the city doesn't have to spend $60,000 or $100,000 down the line to house that survivor. And also, we are in a position to help bring them, we have a saying at Dash where we meet survivors where they are. Dash's programs are never a one-size-fits-all approach. Whatever we provide for, you, Doug, or myself, or any other person is always really uniquely to where that person is and what they need. And so we're moving towards addressing that statistic, knowing that COVID certainly throws a wrench in there and makes it a little bit more difficult. But one of the things COVID has done is it's also challenged us to innovate once more. It's challenged us to innovate how we deliver services, how we can multiply impact, and how we can ensure that in our quest to meet and serve more survivors, we don't dilute the quality of the services that survivors are receiving from Dash.
So all the more reason to have a strategic plan with the city to address this, to help identify things, to help identify cases earlier, so that you can step in and keep them from being homeless as opposed to housing them. That is a very cost-effective way of dealing with that. So congratulations to all of you. And I think the strategic plan coming out in August should help the city, we hope, with their funding decisions as they move forward. I mean, it's very frustrating when the federal government treats DC like a territory instead of a state and keeps $700 million away from the district that it really was entitled to help the district respond to COVID. So that's something else that you're having to deal with as well. Tell me.
And I will say to that point, Doug, that we are leveraging the federal dollars as well. Dash also receives federal funding from HUD and from the Office Against Violence on Women. And there are legislation that has come out resulting from COVID that provides some financial relief for organizations. And so when we have the opportunity we do advocate not just with our local government, but also on the federal level, reaching out to them to ensure that when they are making those allocations of dollars, that they are thinking about how organizations can leverage them. And one of the things, the team, I always describe myself as a weird hybrid of people and numbers, but making sure that when these funding resources are being provided, and that's been another major bonus of COVID, is that the funding is provided with flexibility, right? To be able to provide funding to agencies that are general support, right? It's never sexy. Nobody wants to fund, the G&A line, but that G&A line is what's keeping organizations running. It's what allows us to do our job. So we are hopeful that the lessons learned from COVID about what's possible in philanthropy will sustain, and that our federal and local partners will learn from those lessons as well.
So Mahan Tabakoli, the chair of LGW, has a question about upstream, about what are some other areas where we could identify needs and issues before someone is homeless, before a family is homeless, and then you've got to find housing for them. What are some of the areas that you're looking at to help do that?
I think, DC is very fortunate to have a great breadth and depth of nonprofits who are, working to address these issues. And, Mahan's question about what are some of the other issues that need to be addressed, whether it's food insecurity or hunger or, the education gap and the lack of IT resources. A lot of these issues, Mahan, stem back to some of the systemic and deeply rooted inequities that exist within our country and within our system. And I think it was Tanya Wellens on her Frontline talk who talked about pre-existing inequities, right? And so before COVID, we were talking a lot about pre-existing conditions. But I think we have an opportunity as a community and as a nation to not just talk, but to have action around the pre-existing inequities that, sort of permeate every single aspect of our safety net. There are massive gaps in our safety net, and COVID showed us that. We knew they were there, but we didn't know just how glaring those holes were in that safety net. And so, Mahan, as we're looking at, what are these issues and how do we address them? There are so many thought partners in the nonprofit world. There are so many thought partners and experts on the philanthropy side and certainly in public service. And, this is our call to action. It's our time to really ensure that we're listening to each other and that we are providing each other the platforms to be able to do what we do and to think of new ways in which to do that. We can't return to normal because normal wasn't working.
Yeah, Koube, you're absolutely right. I keep saying that if anyone ever doubted there was racial inequity or racial injustice in the United States, that COVID just blew a hole through that doubt, that it proved COVID's impact on people of color has been terribly, terribly damaging. And I think it's exposed all of these other issues that you've just talked about and mentioned. Any thoughts on what I call the righteous unrest that we're seeing? Across the world now, across the world.
The last few weeks have been raw. I don't know of any other way to put it. I think, Doug, that I was born and raised in Cameroon, West Africa. And, my family relocated to the United States when I was in 1999. And my mother, who was, a university professor, a women's rights activist, relocated my sister and I to the US to create a better life for us here. And so this year makes 21 years. And about 3 weeks ago, right when this racial reckoning was happening, my mother sat my sisters and I down and apologized for bringing us to the United States.
That's very powerful. That's really something.
It is. So it broke my heart. And at the same time, it made me really want to ensure that I'm doing my part, right? Because everything that we do, from Dash to LGW to everyone, I have a staff who are predominantly Black and Brown, and Dash serves predominantly Black and Brown survivors. The average survivor at Dash is a 26-year-old African-American woman with 2 children. And that could be me. It could be my uncle, it could be my brother, it could be any one of us. And so it is, I think, my mother apologizing to me for bringing, and my sister for bringing us to the United States was a wake-up call. And I've always known, you know, I grew up knowing my worth. I grew up never doubting anything about myself. And so when I came to the US, I just walked in that power, right? Until racism reminded me that that's not how the world sees me. And that's not how the world sees hundreds and thousands of people here in the United States and worldwide. So it is heartbreaking, but it's just time for action, right? I have been frustrated, I have been angry, I have been sad, my body has broken down. My team will tell you that 2 weeks ago, I could barely even get up from the couch. But through it all, I think if we don't do something, actionable steps now, you know, if not now, then what, right? You know, so.
That's the challenge, and we're seeing some of the same old politics arise across kind of Minnesota. The assembly there, the legislature can't agree on police reform, so it looks like they might go out of session without really doing anything about it, which I think would be infuriating to not just the people of Minnesota, but people all over the country. And it's time for, as you said, the normal is not working. It hasn't been working for some time. I call what we're in now sort of the dynamic normal. We're not going to get to a new normal. We're going to get to a normal that changes every day. And we're seeing that happen. How can we, your mother's breaking my heart here. How can we give her some of the hope that you and I have about where we're headed and what we're doing? I mean, how are you doing? How's your mother doing?
She's doing okay. She's actually, hoping to relocate to the DC metropolitan area. So, Doug, you'll get to meet her.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait.
But she is my rock, right? Like, so in Cameroon, you are named, in my culture, you're named for who you're supposed to be. And so I am named after my mother's mother. Her name is, so my grandmother, her name is Koube Cecilia Ngaaje. And my name is Koube Ngaaje. And my full name means gifted warrior born of wealth. And my mother chose that specifically, right? And so I think even in her despair about where we are as a nation, I stand on the shoulders of matriarchs. And, I know that every day I go to work at Dash, every day I show up, every day I sit at the table. She has a voice, I have a voice, and I am so looking forward to us continuing to use that voice and to bring additional people to the table because that's the only way in which we're going to be able to move past it. And it's okay. Like, this is going to be an uncomfortable process, and I think Rosie said that in her talk, and I participate, Doug, in one of the offshoots of the Putting Race on the Table conversations from several years ago. Margarita Rosenfeld, who's part of that group, and Han Lee, and Kira, who's over at the legal firm. we've all had conversations about what it means to walk in this space as a Black or brown person, and then what it means for us to challenge those systems. And, as we continue forward, I'm heartened, right? I'm both heartbroken and heartened about what's possible. And, specifically for Dash, my board and I had a conversation about what does it mean to truly be an anti-racist organization? Doing social justice and equity work has always been part of who we are. It is in our DNA. But we will carve out time in the coming weeks and months to talk about what it means to move forward as an anti-racist organization, and how we build that through every single layer of the organization, from our staff to our board to our volunteers. And, we have some dedicated organizational development plans underway, alongside rolling out a brand new program in the middle of COVID. We are, we're going to be hiring for several new positions in the next few weeks and months, and we are looking at those positions with an equity lens. And we've worked with Margarita Rosenfeld of Insight International for 2 years. We're starting to work with Brighter Strategies to continue that work on our human capital. And I think for us, one of the ways in which we are challenging the system is through dedicated and targeted human capital efforts, by investing in those Black and brown staff, by investing in the people who make Dash possible.
Well, Koube, you're getting a lot of shout outs in the chat room from members of your class, the class of 2020, Virtually Unstoppable. Plus from Margarita, and plus a lot of other people commending you for your courage, your openness. Taurine Creppy said that she is, her husband is from the Ivory Coast. He's been here 25 years, and that she and he had that same conversation you had with your mother last week. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of that going around. So thank you. And people are just saying they're so proud of you. So we really, really appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you all.
You mentioned some LGW members who have been working with you. Is any LGW member or members sort of reached out in the last couple of months in particular to help you with any of this?
Ooh, it's a long list. I have had LGW members praying over me. I have had LGW members call and text. In the entire class of 2020, Virtually Unstoppable, literally virtually unstoppable. I said during our closing retreat on Thursday and Friday, there is absolutely no way that I would have gotten through, the last 6 months without LGW. It's almost as if the universe and God knew that we needed to be together for such a time as this. And it has been the definition of leadership for me. Pinky Mayfield, I don't know the amount of work that she has to do on a daily basis, but she still found the time to text me and check on me or call me. Nadelka, and I mean, I could go on for days and days, but LGW also showed up in true form with efforts to fundraise. The Putting Race on the Table group, after we had a conversation, they sent out a call to action from all of their classes to be able to get us through. And it really has meant a lot. We've had LGW members like Kathy Alvarado and Lisa Weiss who've arranged for meals to be delivered to Dash for our frontline staff. And there's just so many people who have stepped up and showed out. Debbie, Chase, you, Doug, the entire staff. When we've needed to bounce ideas off of people, you've been there, you've answered. People have gotten emails from me at 2 a.m. in the morning, and I am truly humbled. It has shown me just what is possible when a community rallies together. And yeah, so thank you.
So Koube, thank you. That you summed up sort of the force of LGW in a much better way than I could. Of people reaching out to leaders, reaching out to each other and helping each other in times of need, and providing resources and just support for others. Kathy Alvarado said that you are quite the inspiration to her. And let me see if I can find this here, sorry. Your courage and actions are an encouragement to us all, and I'm confident we can and will be better. And now we're hearing from a couple people who know your mother, your mom,
Oh,
Auntie Rosaline.
yeah.
She's a force, they're saying. They're happy to know her. And one person said that she taught her in elementary school, in secondary school in Cameroon. So,
Yeah,
and it's Rachel Tita, and she's her VP here in the USA. So,
I love it.
yeah.
Thank you, Auntie. Oh, I love it.
So you need to bring, is it Rosaline? What do we say?
It's Rosalind.
Rosalind. Okay, so we need to bring Auntie Rosalind to an LGW meeting so we can introduce her to everybody.
I think you might have to. She came up right before, everything happened with COVID. NBC4 had a Black History Month celebration of local heroes. And I was one of the 4 recipients. And I told them, this is not my award. This is my mother's. And so it is hers. And it was an honor for me to have her here to be able to receive that. And so I will be sure to share these kind words with her. It will make her day.
And Pinky Mayfield says you rock, sister. And I'm sure Pinky would want to sit next to your mother at an LGW event. That'd be great. So
Yes, let's
tell
make
your mother, tell her she has to move down here just to meet LGW.
I think we can make it. I think we can make it happen.
Great. So any particular leadership lesson that you have learned over these past couple of months?
So many. I have a much deeper humility and appreciation for just everything that it takes to be a leader. I have never felt the weight of my role more than I have in the last few months. And the ability to tell my team I don't have all the answers. My team has seen me break down in tears multiple times through all of this. We're an organization that works in trauma, right? Like that is what we do. We help to alleviate trauma, and COVID has been a traumatic experience of its own, coupled with the traumatic experience of the last month. And my greatest lesson in this time has been just realizing the resiliency. Dash has always been resilient, and I call my resiliency compartmentalization. And it has just been humbling to really see that resiliency in action time and time again. When I started working at Dash, August will be 3 years. So I took over from Peg Haskell, who's a LGW member as well. And in those 3 years, Dash has more than doubled. We've grown from a 3.2 to $3.5 million organization. We're pushing 5.8 now. And so we have gone through a lot, and I couldn't be more proud. And COVID has challenged us to think of doing that work in new ways again. And so I'm really looking forward to what's possible in the future. I'm looking forward to, getting to work closely with the rest of the LGW members. I'm looking forward to, going even deeper and having more success with our capital campaign to be able to secure that home, because without it, DC loses 50% of its inventory for survivors in the city. I'm looking forward to launching the best youth domestic violence housing program that survivors have ever, experienced, in not just in DC, but in the nation. And so there's a lot to look forward to. It's an uphill climb, but I'm also looking forward to hopefully taking better care of myself.
And I'm looking forward to being there with you while you do all of that, Koube. LGW is here to support you, help you. Leadership Greater Washington is also very excited about the future and ways that we can innovate and change and provide more value to our members. So we're thrilled that you're a part of the class of 2020, virtually unstoppable once again.
Yes.
And, how everybody asks, how can we help you? What can we do to help Dad?
Yes, and Chase is right on time. Thank you, Chase. Absolutely, we would love to have everyone activate their resources. And again, just remembering that domestic violence is a leading cause of homelessness. And as the largest domestic violence housing provider in the DC metropolitan area, we are asking all of you to join us in this work. I welcome the opportunity to engage with anyone who has questions that, after you think about it or that didn't get answered today. Please visit us on our website, dc.org. We also update our wish list all the time. And please also feel free to contact me directly. I'll type in my email in the chat. Would love to engage you guys in this conversation when we have the updated strategic plan for domestic violence housing, how we can move forward, especially with projected cuts in the mayor's budget. And so, yeah, you all are now part of the Dash family. You've heard the feedback. Not only you're part of the Dash family, you're part of the LGW family. So would love to hear from you. Please get online, reach out to me directly, and let's get some action.
So if we want to support Kathy Alvarado and Lisa Wise in helping provide meals for your staff, is there a way to do that on the Dash website, or how would we go about doing that?
I don't think we have it set up on the Dash website, but yeah, just send me an email and we'd love to get that set up. Kathy and her team are working with Compass Rose, I believe, and I think we're getting a lovely meal delivered this weekend for our frontline staff. Our board did the same for our team members through gift cards. So there's no shortage of ways to be engaged. Please let us know as well.
So Koube, thank you very much for your time. I could spend the rest of the day chatting with you. The only thing I regret is I'm not there to hug you in person. I really wish I
know. I miss hugs too. Like there's a meme that's been circulating that says, please check on the huggers. We're not okay. We aren't. So I'm looking forward to the next time you and I can share a hug.
Any final words for us?
Final words. Thank you. Thank you all for carving out the time to have this conversation and listen in today. When all of us are being pulled out in so many different directions, it really means a lot. It means the world to me, it means the world to Dash, that you are willing to lend your voices to support survivors. And I ask that you take this conversation and have it with your family, with your firm, with your community, and please stay engaged. We would love to hear from you.
Koube, thank you so much. What an unbelievable conversation. So I want to thank you very much for that. And let me just see, Kathy had something there. Kathy's working through an organization called Fueling the Fearless. So that's who is helping her with the meal. So thank you so much. And thank you, LGW. Thank you for another great conversation. And Koube, you have a wonderful week, and may all your worries disappear.
Doug, from your mouth to God's ears. Thank you. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful day.